All right, so today we're not just looking at a sport. No, we're opening up a case file on a game that was so unbelievably fast, so intense, it became the perfect cover for one of the slickest criminal operations in American history. This is the real story of Jai Alai.
And boom, right there, that quote just flips the whole script, doesn't it? The speed wasn't just about the thrill of the game, it was a weapon. It was the ultimate misdirection.
So just how fast are we talking? Well, the ball they use, it's called a pelota, could hit a staggering 188 miles per hour. This thing's made of goat skin wrapped around hard rubber, and it's basically a rock. This insane speed was the main event, the spectacle that packed the stands night after night. But, while everyone's eyes were glued to the blur on the court, this was the speed that really mattered in the back rooms. $10,000 a week. That's what Whitey Bulger's crew was skimming right off the top. And believe me, that was just the tip of the iceberg.
So you gotta picture it. To the tourists, to the regular folks, Jai Alai was sold as the Merry Festival. It was this vibrant, exotic piece of Basque culture and incredible athletic skill. But just underneath that shiny surface was a high-velocity machine for organized crime. Our source material calls it a kinetic fraud. The game itself was the engine for the whole con.
Okay, so you're probably asking, why Jai Alai? Of all the sports out there, what made this one the perfect vehicle for a criminal enterprise? Well, let's break down exactly what made this game so easy to corrupt. The whole secret is this concept right here, a fixed state betting medium. See, this isn't like a regular game of chance. This is a system that's built from the ground up to be controlled. We're talking about a setup where the house doesn't just have an edge, the house is writing the ending. Just think about it for a sec. Compare this to something like horse racing. With horses, there's always a wild card. An animal can just have a good day, pull off a surprise win, and ruin a fix. But with Jai Alai, with its unique format and, crucially, total control over the players, there were no accidents. The syndicate had complete command of that scoreboard.
And behind all that control, there's a really dark human cost. For years, the best players were all brought over from the Basque region of Spain. The Fronton owners held their visas, which meant a player's entire life in the US depended on them playing ball, literally. They weren't just athletes, they were property, whose careers could be erased with one call to immigration.
Look, skimming 10 grand a week? That's just basic theft, right? But the syndicate was way more ambitious. With the players completely under their thumb, they pulled off something far more elegant. It was a strategy our source calls the Quinella Trap, and it was designed to bleed the public dry. So here's the playbook. It's actually genius in a really terrible way. First, they'd lean on a key player, tell them to miss a simple catch, botch a serve, right at a make-or-break moment. They weren't throwing the entire game, just those critical points. This let the syndicate perfectly engineer who came in first and second. Then they'd go collect these massive payouts on so-called exotic bets, like the Quinella. So while the public was betting on a maybe, the syndicate, they were betting on a sure thing. And get this, the court itself, the Fronton, it was basically an architectural weapon. It was designed for sensory overload. You have the deafening crack of the ball, the blur of speeds over 150 miles per hour, the players shouting in a language you don't understand, the odds flashing and changing on the board. It was all meant to put you into what the source calls a gamble trance, a state where you're so overwhelmed you have no clue what's really going on. So this whole system was almost a perfect machine. But, when that much money and greed are involved, things are bound to get bloody. This fraud wasn't just about cash, it was about power, and any threat to that power was dealt with, permanently.
And this is the moment the whole dark underbelly of Jai Alai just explodes into the public eye. A legitimate businessman, Roger Wheeler, the owner of World Jai Alai, he finds the skim. He starts asking questions, and in May of '81, the Winter Hill Gang sent their top hitman, John Martirano, to give him the answer. Wheeler was shot dead in a country club parking lot. The message couldn't have been clearer. Stay away from the mob's money.
Now, you'd think a public execution, a huge murder trial, that would be the end of it, right? But ironically, that's not what killed the mob's Jai Alai cash cow. It wasn't the FBI. It wasn't reporters. It was just a better business model. So a couple of things happened that really changed the game. In 1988, the players finally had enough and went on strike, the longest in American sports history. By the time they came back, the public's trust was gone. But the real nail in the coffin?
State lotteries and tribal casinos started popping up everywhere, and the syndicate realized there were much easier ways to make money.
It really just came down to a strategic pivot. Think of it like this. Jai Alai was a fast kill. Yeah, the profits were huge, but it was high maintenance. You had to control players, fix games, and occasionally, kill people. A casino or a state lottery? That's a slow bleed. It's a clean, self-sustaining, and way more efficient machine for taking the public's money. The mob simply cashed out its shares in Jai Alai because a better investment came along.
All right, so when you put it all together, when you look back at the supposed golden age of Jai Alai in America, what's the final verdict? What was this whole spectacle really about? The source material on this is just brutally honest. It boils down to this. Jai Alai was a money laundering operation, plain and simple, wearing the mask of a beautiful Basque tradition. The speed, the danger, the athleticism, it was all just smoke and mirrors to keep your eyes off the real action.
And that really leaves us with one big question to chew on, doesn't it? When an operation is that rotten to the core, from the players to the owners to the bets, can you even call it a sport anymore? Or was it always, from the very beginning, just a really fast con?
And that wraps up this deep dive. This content was provided compliments of our Casino Combat podcast. Copyright 2025 Volcanic Dingo, LLC, all rights reserved. And a final reminder, this is for entertainment purposes only. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem and wants help, call 1-800-GAMBLER. Win more, keep more, and we'll see you in the lounge.